Hi, it's John here at Primal Woods, and I'm coming to you today with my third power meal recipe. This one I'm calling the Supercharged Power Meal. Why do I call it the Supercharged Power Meal? Well, the fundamental reason is the addition of liver to the recipe. Liver is one of the most nutrient-dense parts of the animal, if not the most nutrient-dense part of the animal. So I'm including that, basically trying to get closer to nose to tail in this one pot meal. I'm going to mix two-thirds of a pound of the liver with 5 1/3 pound of ground beef. And I use this organic, grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. And I know people worry about the expense. I do too. As it turns out, I went to Aldi today. They're selling family packs. This is 4 pounds for $17. That's a little over $4 a pound for organic, grass-fed, and grass-finished ground beef. So 4 of those packages is 5 1/3 pound. I'll add 2/3 of a pound of liver, and that'll get me up to the 6 pounds of meat I usually have in the recipe. The second change is I'm doubling the amount of sodium. We're using Redmond real salt. That's mined somewhere down in Utah, I think. So I'm going to basically each serving, so it goes into 14 pint ball jars. Each serving will have a gram of sodium in it. Now you're after 4 to 5 grams a day, which is the equivalent of 2 to 2.5 teaspoons. So with 2 of these meals a day, you'll be halfway to that. And this is particularly important for people who are going low carb or ketogenic, because the body tends to deal with these electrolytes differently. Sodium supplementation is important. And if you don't have enough sodium, your body will start wasting potassium, which is another downer. So you really want to keep your sodium level up. That helps with energy levels. It prevents cramping, or it's part of preventing cramping together with magnesium. And just that kind of sluggish feeling will go away. So sodium supplementation is crucial, and I've tried to incorporate that into this recipe. Together with that, everything here is organic basically, so carrots, mushrooms, spinach, and broccoli. I'll give you a complete recipe with all the micronutrient breakdowns of this complete recipe. So I thank you for watching. Stay with me. The next step is going to be to grind up the liver so that I can mix it easily in with the ground beef. So I bought this little, I guess it was a $35 attachment to the KitchenAid mixer. It'll allow me to grind up this liver because you can't get it ground at the store. You can scarcely find it at the store. And I can also use it when I'm processing deer, so I'm looking forward to that too. But stay with me. We'll get to it step by step. Thanks for watching. Now, as discussed, I'm going to grind up the liver. So I'm doing this for the first time. Using this piece of equipment for the first time. It comes with a fine extruding plate and a coarse. I'm using the fine extruding plate. The liver is still partially frozen from the store, which is a good thing. I think if it's not frozen, you want to freeze it to some extent. It just makes the grinding easier. So, it'll, instead of coming out as basically mush, it'll actually come out like the ground beef. So basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a big, and it's already pretty well thawed on one side there. I'm going to take a big knife here, and I'm basically just going to cut it up into strips that I can drop in to the grinder. Now you can hear I'm getting into the frozen part of it. I'm also, by my left hand here, I've got a scale, digital scale. And so as the liver comes out into the bowl, I'm going to be weighing it. And basically when I get to 302 grams, a pound is 454 grams. So a third of it's about 150 grams. So when I get in that neighborhood, I'm going to stop filling this bowl and put something else under there to catch the last third of a pound, probably another bowl. And then that bowl I'll just set aside for the next recipe. So with that, the scale will zero with the bowl on it, so it's reading 0 grams. I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm going to start dropping the liver into the grinder, and hopefully it goes nicely. Here we go, first time. Just past 100 grams. Remember, we're after 300 more or less. Wondered what the back end of this thing was for. The front end is for tightening this collar on. Back end is a plunger, basically. I'm at 218, 240, 274, getting there. 296. Okay, that's 314 grams. I'm calling that 2/3 of a pound. And now I'll save the rest for later. On to the next step now, which will be starting to prepare the other ingredients, which involve some cutting, chopping, and so on, and then starting to brown the ground beef. I figured you didn't need to see me doing the simple work. Most of this stuff just as it came out of the package. So here we have the broccoli and carrots. Those are the first things that go in after the burger is browned. So broccoli, I've got a pound of broccoli here, 12 ounces of carrots. I've got 8 ounces of these Bella mushrooms. And then I've got, what is this? It's 5 ounces of spinach right out of the bag. And then about 14 ounces of chopped yellow onion. It turned out to be about 2.5 medium onions. So with all that ready to go, I'm going to get the burger browning in the stock pot, and then we'll pick it up from there. There's no magic to this part. I simply took the hamburger right out of the package, put it into the stock pot. I've got it on high heat. After it's browned and I'm adding the veggies, I'll turn that down, but right now it's on high heat for browning. And then I've got my liver glop here, I'm calling it. I think next time, 2 lessons learned. 1, the liver needs to be frozen more solidly before I grind it. And 2, I'm going to use the coarse dye, if you will, instead of the fine one, to see if I can't get something that looks a bit more like burger. But regardless, the liver will be in the recipe. It'll have the same nutrient content, so I'm good with that. My tool of choice for breaking up the ground beef and folding it or stirring it, if you will, while it's browning is this long-handled spoon. It's basically a stainless steel handle with a silicone spoon on the end of it. It's if you have some tool that's all plastic, if you will, they're just too flexible for breaking up and turning 6 pounds of ground beef. So that's why I use this tool. The ground beef is perhaps 1/3 of the way to being completely browned, and it's broken up. So I'm going to go ahead and put the liver in at this point. And we'll fold that in. Okay, it's starting to look pretty good. While we're still browning here, I'm going to throw in my tablespoon of red pepper flakes. And 3 teaspoons of salt, is otherwise known as a tablespoon. So a tablespoon of the the Redmond salt, real salt. We're almost ready to add the veggies. Okay, meat is in good shape. Okay, really looking good. So I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. Maybe just to like a medium or a medium high. And then I'm going to start putting my veggies in. Okay, so I'm going to start with the carrots and the broccoli. These hold up best. In other words, they don't disintegrate with the heat. I mean, both Jerry and I, we like these veggies at least to be a little al dente in the pasta sense, to the tooth, have a little bit of firmness left in them. So basically, once I've added them, I just fold them in, which is to say, I go down to the bottom and I get the burger and I kind of bring it up, or get the veggies to mix in throughout. And then it doesn't take long for the burger to basically cook the broccoli and the carrots. So we'll let that go for a few minutes, and then we'll add in the rest of the veggies. Okay, just a quick note, you don't need to add any fat to this recipe. There's plenty in the ground beef. I did have, I think, 3 tablespoons of lard in the first recipe. I did that once, and then I didn't use the lard after that. So this is what it looks like when, we'll freeze about half of these. I'll keep maybe half of them in the fridge because I go through them about 2 a day. You can see this nice, good saturated fat here at the bottom. What I do is I just take this lid off, I put it in the microwave, 5 minutes, power level 7, ready to eat. That's simple. I'm ready to fold in the remaining vegetables. Keep in mind that, you'll be heating this up again to eat. So they'll get at least a little bit more cooking. Put the onions in. I'm a big fan of onions. I love the flavor. They're not very nutrient dense, and they're the biggest source of carbohydrates in the meal. So I don't use as many as I otherwise might. Okay, then the shrooms. Okay, with that, I'll stop here, let this go for a few minutes before I put the spinach in. I'll basically just fold the spinach in at the end, and then we'll head for the canning. Meanwhile, I'm going to set up my canning station. I made a mistake. I need another tablespoon of, another 3 teaspoons of salt. So I'll just roll that in now. Of course, if that's a little too salty for you, cut back and get it into your diet some other way. I was adding it to the individual power meals as I ate them, so I figured why not just put it in the recipe. Just going to fold in the spinach now. You might have got the impression that I'm a lazy cook. And you'd be right. So this recipe takes me about, start to finish with cleanup, about an hour and 15 minutes. And I usually eat 1 or 2 meals in a day. I would say usually 2, depends on Jerry's schedule, if we're able to eat dinner together or not. If we're able to eat dinner together, that's a 1 power meal day. If we're not, that's a 2 power meal day. Just a couple minutes now, and then we'll get on with the canning. Okay, so now we're on to the canning. I've got 14 of these. I think they're more like 12 ounce, 10, but they're 12 ounce to the fill line. So 3/4 of a pint. Ball jars with lids, indispensable. If you do any canning, you have one of these funnels. If you don't do any canning, but you're going to start making power meals, this is worth the couple bucks it'll cost you. Okay, so I just try to eyeball them and kind of keep my mix mixed up. I'm going down to the bottom because the liquid, that's the fat at this point, obviously goes to the bottom. So that last spoon, I usually kind of have to do that to get it in there low enough. Okay, and that's a jar. Don't worry that the mix isn't exactly perfect. If you eat them all, you'll get the average that'll be on the nutrition label per serving. Okay, I don't let anything go to waste here, so make sure you're getting all those good fats. Just that little bit left into what kind of a low jar. And with that, they're filled. Next stop, just put the lids on them. And just like when you can anything, I just set them aside, and it won't be long. You'll start hearing the lids popping. These will freeze just fine. If you think you're going to be eating a couple the next day, just take them out, put them in the fridge. Move them from freezer to fridge, in other words. And they'll be ready to heat up the next day. So there you go. 14 supercharged power meals in the can, ready to roll. Thanks so much for watching.